doctor, we can see.
Okay. How about the voice? Do you feel any lagging or like, is it clear?
Yeah, doctor, it's clear as last.
Not much. Okay. So then I think I can continue until we'll get power. Right. Um, welcome to the fifth session, IT516 System Analysis and Design module. And today we are going to focus on object-oriented analysis and, basically design technologies. Basically, we are going to look at like why object orientation actually got very popular, and also like what kind of, tools and techniques that you have to implement the object orientation, right? So if you go back to, why object-oriented methodology emerges because of, programming, object-oriented programming languages like Java, or nowadays we have Python and so on, right? And many interested in because object orientation is modular, reusable, and easy to maintain. Many complex software systems were, modeled using object orientation. And in our case, we will focus on our discussion on information systems. In there, we will talk about object-oriented analysis. We'll try to find objects within the information systems, and that could be a person, place, event, or the transaction. Now, if you look at an example, like when you talk about somebody making an appointment to see a doctor, in this particular person will be a patient, and patient will be an object, and then doctor is also object, and then when you take the appointment, and that itself will be an object. So this is popular approach. So you can see it as a set of objects and interact with the, sending and receiving messages. Right now, in object-oriented analysis, you will get what we call object model, and it represents information systems using object as well as object-oriented concepts. So today we are going to look at some of these concepts in detail. Now, if I start with the objects, right? We can have like person, place, event, transaction, and which is significant to the information systems. We are not actually going to model everything. And when you take object, you have data as well as processes, right? This is slightly different from other, modalities. Object orientation can include data as well as processes. Right now, when you take a customer, for example, you can have name, address, account number, and also current balance. Not only that, there will be some specific tasks the customer can, perform, like placing an order, paying a bill, changing addresses, and so on. Now, if you look at some graphical representation, usually you might be, familiar with this representation. This is I have taken from the textbook. So one side you will see a parent object, the other side you will see instances. So that is very first thing that we need to understand in the very beginning. So in parent object, you have a set of data points like attributes like name, age, sex, hair color, and so on. Then you have processors like methods. We have in this particular case to read bedtime story and drive in the carpool, and so on. So when you take up particular instances, that means instance of that parent object, you can see that for each attribute, you have a relevant attribute value. So for name, the first instance, you can see Mary Smith, and the age is 25, she's a female, and then hair color is red, and so on, right? So here we can have like 3 instances which corresponds to this parent object. Similarly, there will be some child objects. Now, when you say parent and child, that means most of the time in object orientation, we have this kind of a relationship. Now, when you say child object, usually we call it inherits. Inherit means whatever the attributes available in the parent will be available with the child. So you can see here the attributes name, age, sex, hair color we have seen in the parent one, that is also in the child object. Other than that, it also has number of siblings. Then the method also, it has like, different set of methods for the child. Pick up toys, eat dinner, play, cooperate, get ready for bed, and so on. And similarly, if you look at the instances for the child object, you can see for each of these attributes, you should be having some values. Right, another one, let's say dog object, right? In this particular case, again, you are going to like inherit what we have: name, breed, age, color, sex, and favorite food, and so on. Then the different methods: wag tail, eat, fetch, and sleep. And then you can also have like 3 instances for this with the corresponding values. Now, if you go more into the details of this, attributes basically describe some kind of a characteristics. So like name, right? Age. So it will describe. Then objects inherit, acquire certain attributes from other objects. So this is exactly what I've been telling earlier. Sometimes you might inherit to getting from, for example, usually sometime we used to say that we will get some things from our parents, right? Similar thing comes here as well. And acquire certain attributes other objects. Object can have a specific attribute called state, which describes the object current states. Right, now current status mean like the status of object may change. Right now you are enrolled in the MSc program. That means you are a current student. Once you complete, you will become a past student, right? Similarly, if you take a bank account, once you open a bank account, and then when you're having regular activities like deposit and withdrawal, your account will be in active state. But let's say you have not used this for the 3 months time, okay, bank can put your account in inactive. Right. Okay, so that's about the attributes. Now, in this particular case, again, you see another 2 objects, student and instructor. So you can see some attributes are common, some slightly different. Similarly, another one, you have a set of attributes and you have a set of methods. Again, another attribute, sorry, another object. We have a registration record. Okay, so we have student number, fitness class, registration date, and fee and status. Right, so that's about the attributes. Next, the methods. In methods, I told you like you can perform some tasks. And usually, if you need to elaborate more, you can have steps. Now, for example, this method says more fries, or for different fries, right? So it lists down all the steps as well. Heating oil, fill fry bake with frozen potato strips, lower basket into hot oil, check for readiness when ready, raise basket and let drain, pour fries into warming tray, add salt and so on. Similarly, if you look at adding a student to, let's say, some kind of a database, like add new record to record instance, and they record instant and let's say you have number, name, address, telephone number, date of birth, sex, and the state. And finally, we need to save it, right? So that actually, shows you like how you may actually, define methods, and the exact steps are also you can, present. Right. The third thing in object orientation is passing messages among different objects. So this is how the interaction happens. So we can say a message is a command tells an object to perform certain method, right? So you can see here you have student object. Inside that you have attributes and methods. Yes, just check which one is that could be used. Right? Right. Okay, so when you talk about the messages, I told you like how these objects interact each other. Basically, for that, you can use messages. Now, in this particular example, what you see there is we have same message, but there it's a different meaning, right? So, for example, when you say good night, parent object has to do something like reading a bedtime story, while child get ready for the bed. And similarly, dog also goes to sleep. So one message, but how these three objects react slightly different. Right? So this idea is actually giving message to different meaning to different objects. We call polymorphism. Same thing, but you will have different results sometimes. Right, the concepts, class. Now, when you take object, we call it, the objects are belong to what we call classes. So classes like a template, usually we can use to, create objects. So usually when you say objects within a class, you will have same column attributes and the methods. And then objects with and a class can be grouped into subclasses. So that means you can go into more detail. It's something like saying, let's say a person, and then we can go to specialize it, subclass, like teacher, and then student, and so on. Right. Okay. So class will actually have, kind of a template I told you. So when you create objects, so it will have the same attributes and the methods, right? Okay. Now let's look at some subclasses, like we have a vehicle, and then there are some subclasses based on vehicle. You can have, car, minivan, truck, school bus. So there are some common attributes. These common attributes means whatever in the vehicle will be available for each of these. That means for car, minivan, truck, and school bus. But apart from that, sometimes you will have a very specific attributes belongs to subclass, right? For example, truck, you can see number of attributes increase. All the attributes that you can have here, all the attributes that you have in vehicle is available in truck, plus you have a load limit. And then you have all the methods. Right. Similarly, you can have employee in this example. So that is the class. You can find set of attributes, and then there will be a set of methods. So the subclasses are more specific ones. Let's assume that we are creating subclasses for manager, office staff, and instructor. Now, depend on your requirement, you can have some attributes belong to that class. Right. And the next one is class can belong to more general categories, super classes. Right. Now, for example, if you look at this example, in the middle one, we have an employee. And then we have subclass, which is very specialized version of class. Right. Superclass is also try to generalize. Usually that also should be less than any predetermined number of codes. Right. Let's look at relations. Right. Relationships means I told you like in here. Hello, can you hear me now? Lahiro, can you hear me?
Doctor, I think we can't hear. We can see your screen, but sound is not coming. There is some lag in it. Voice.
Doctor?
Hello,
Yeah,
yeah.
it's okay, doctor, because of its. Um, Yes, doctor, you can postpone it next week, doctor, because of we can see the clear screen, but doctor, your voice we couldn't get it clear. Sometime it's interrupted
I understand. Okay. So by then we'll meet next week.
because of I think power failure and the connection is a doctor.
Yeah, yeah, that might be the reason.